Bonjour, je m'appelle Chris Johnson from the Normies, and I would like for you to give it up to our final keynote speaker, who's going to be talking with us about how small design studios can provide solutions for big challenges. Straight out of Toronto, Canada, it's going to be Jay Wall and Kaila Jacques of RallyRally.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's great to be in beautiful Indy today. I was virtually coming to you from Toronto. We're here in pandemic lockdown mode, holed up in our respective homes. So nice to have some time at the end of the week. Thanks so much for creating space for us. It's been great to watch some of the talks this week and be part of the many conversations. So just a little bit, we're going to kind of share a bit of our story today. RallyRally is a design studio dedicated to social change. We'll get more into that, but we want to kind of start with how we got here, and then also take you through a bit of the journey of some of the projects that we've worked on over the years that have helped define and shape the way that we see ourselves as designers and our role in advancing social change. So just a little bit about where we're coming to you from Toronto. This is actually Treaty 13 territory, subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement for everyone who lives around here to take care of the Great Lakes and the resources around here. We do that as settlers in this place, and we try to be mindful of that in the approach to our work. And we think, especially given the topic this week of sustainability, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be kind of detouring a little bit from sustainability topics to talking a bit more broadly about design and social change across a range of issues, including environmental issues, but others as well. So we're taking kind of a holistic view there. So let me take you back about a decade. Let me introduce you to this guy. This is me with longer hair and in a different period of my life. This is actually a picture from my graduating design class, which Kaila was actually a part of at York University and Sheridan College here in Toronto. And at that moment, I had heard of, there was these conversations, I think maybe weren't quite as mature as they are nowadays. This talk about what is our role as designers to to do social good or social impact, whatever those words might be. And I'd heard about the First Things First manifesto from back in the 1960s, talking about designers who were sort of saying we should use our especially as like branding and graphic design folks, using our expertise to do more than just sell stuff. It's like that really resonated with me. I was starting to get a bit more politically engaged and curious about the world, but still very naive. So I was kind of asking this question, like, can design save the world? I don't know. I want to explore that and see what that's like. So around the time that my school was wrapping up, something in Toronto happened called the G20 Summit. This is in the summer of 2010. This photo, by coincidence, is actually about 100 yards down the street from where our studio is right now in downtown Toronto. And that weekend, there was a big G20 summit and mass militarization of the police and mass protests. And I ended up, I would not say I was an activist at that time, but I ended up kind of experiencing some things that weekend and ended up getting unlawfully arrested, disappeared off the street for 28 hours, locked up in a cage. Eventually, my bogus charges were dropped. I got this souvenir, this pink bracelet with the prisoner number on it. But more than that, I came out of this with a kind of a greater awareness of my own privilege. I was pissed off. I was this talk of before we're talking about social justice in a more abstract sense. I had becoming aware of my privileges, especially as a white guy, and thinking about interactions with the police. This was really eye-opening for me to go through this experience, then to be processing the trauma. And it really motivated me to dig into the world of social justice activism and to use kind of answering that question, or trying to answer that question from before, can design save the world, or what is the role of a designer? So in those early days, I started my own design practice before it became RallyRally. It was sort of my own thing about 10 years ago. Got very involved in like environmental justice, social justice movements here in Canada and in Central America. That's me dressed as an owl, giving a hoot at a climate march. And beyond that, it was, as I started my studio, I was doing a lot of just scrappy, small activist work for Indigenous solidarity movements, for climate action projects. I actually had a project featured in Adbusters in 2013. That was pretty cool. And I would say, like, I was just trying to like develop an understanding of how to merge design with the social justice world, but still in this sort of this very like figure it out as you go kind of way, because I had basically no experience working in design agency other than like a 6-month gig. So that's kind of those were the first few years of my journey.
Hi, everyone. Again, just to echo what Jay said, thanks so much for having us. I'm going to tell you a bit how I arrived at RallyRally. So as Jay mentioned, we did our undergrad together. And then right after the undergrad program, I decided to do my master's at York University as well. And this really was because I wanted to explore a topic that interested me very much so a bit deeper. And really, when I stepped into my career, I wanted to show a portfolio of work that really spoke to what, you know, my values were and what was at my core, and present that type of work in the industry. So I wanted to focus. My brother, I should mention, my brother has, his name is Michael, and he has autism and an intellectual disability. And I've always been interested in, you know, how he sees the world and how he learns. And I always felt that there was ways that design and visuals could really help him to, you know, be the best version of himself and to learn concepts that that he struggles with. So what I focused on for my thesis was really looking at individuals with Asperger's, which were kind of outside of autism back then, but now it's kind of seen as one spectrum of all inclusive to autism. And I was looking at time-related struggles and challenges for adults with Asperger's. So my brother really struggles with the sense of time and the feeling of time. So at work, if there's a 15-minute break, he doesn't necessarily know what that feels like. So he has to set a timer. And I remember as a kid, we used to always say to him, you know, it feels like one episode of something like Saved by the Bell or of something, some TV show, so he could have a sense of what that felt like. So I dove into this. I spent 2 years doing my master's, and I really felt that I developed a strong sense of being able to tell a story through research and design, as well as come up with an app in the end that kind of assisted. It was a participatory approach. So I had 4 different participants involved in the process. So it was a great learning experience for me. And then, at the same time, I worked at Evergreen Brickworks as a freelance designer. And this is a really great industrial building that is kind of located in the Toronto Ravine system. And it was an old industrial brickworks factory, and now is seen as a green design building that really cares about creating cities that are livable, green space, and prosperous. So this site is open to the public, and there's lots of different things you can do here. What I helped with was a lot of marketing communication pieces, as well as some installations. So this gave me a little bit of skills about being able to see my design in kind of public spaces. From there, right after my master's at York, I went to Bruce Mao Design, which is a design studio here in Toronto. And I spent 4 years there, and I worked with some great people. And this was really, I started as a junior designer here. So I was thrown into some really great projects, got to learn what I was really interested in. I focused a lot in education, health, and culture projects, and a lot of book design, print design. I was able to work on a website, which helped me develop skills in that, meet some really talented people across the globe, and really develop my design skills and the design process. And then kind of just as a side gig, I've been able to use my brother's relationship and mine to be able to help support him to develop and publish 2 amazing books, which are on the side here. Can't Read, Can't Write, Here's My Book, which was his first book in 2018, and then a children's book to follow just last year. And this I've been able to use design really just to support him in achieving the goals that he wants to do, amplifying his voice, and giving him a platform to really get to know him and to make positive change in the communities. So, you know, he's done over 250 presentations. He's sold 20,000 copies of his first book. And he's really, really shifting the dialogue around what it means to have autism. And so I'm going to pass it to Jay to talk a bit about RallyRally. And I should say what led me to RallyRally was really knowing what the studio was about and how it aligned with the types of things I wanted to learn more about and use design to amplify the great work of our clients.
Thanks, Kaila. So, while I was figuring out my way as a design activist and trying to figure out how to make ends meet doing that, Kaila was off getting some great experience doing research and then working at Bruce Mau Design. And so then about 5 years ago, we reconnected and started working together under the banner that eventually became known as RallyRally. So we describe our work as design for social change. We work with change makers for a more just society. We do this in lots of different ways. Work with nonprofits, with governments, with purpose-driven businesses and foundations. This is a list of some of the types of organizations that we've worked with, ranging from urban planning to climate action to health and human rights and everything in between. In terms of the type of work we do, it's and these are, again, some of the organizations that we worked with, ranging from city governments like City of Toronto to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and some health equity projects in the States, as well as international organizations like UNICEF and some other smaller nonprofits that you might not recognize in Indiana. A lot of our work falls under the umbrella of branding, communications design, web design, campaigns, and but we're pretty multidisciplinary as a studio. Let's go ahead, Kaila. Before we dive into some of our client work, I just want to show you some of the things that we do as a team to go beyond our day-to-day as graphic designers and kind of expand the types of things that we do. So we've been working on some street art projects over the years, doing some public space activations, whether that's painting murals in bike lanes or traffic light box signals at intersections. And it's always like an interesting way to get off our computers, reconnect as a team, obviously in non-COVID times when it's safe to do that, and to kind of meet people on the street and have face-to-face engagement with folks who are engaging with our art. In addition to that, we sometimes do some pro bono projects. So this is an example of a campaign where we teamed up with an Indigenous artist named Isaac Murdoch to create this campaign called One Land, One People. Essentially, is an Indigenous solidarity movement in support of, it really came out of when there was a large so-called migrant caravan approaching the US-Mexico border a few years ago. And it was sort of a statement done in solidarity with other Indigenous artists around the world. We worked with Isaac to create some visuals for that kind of went all over the place as a sign of support. Right, so we're gonna go through a handful of little case studies to give you a taste of what we're thinking about. And just before I pass it to Kaila, really the point we're trying to drive home here today is like, what is our role of designers? And we really want to highlight the important work that our clients, that our project partners are doing, and how what we do can help amplify their messages, help them to tell their stories, help them to build awareness, and ultimately to have a greater impact. So Kaila, over to you for this Center for Social Innovation case study.
Great. So this project with Center for Social Innovation for Climate Solutions. So we worked with the Center for Social Innovation, which is a social enterprise based in Toronto who works across sectors to create a better world. So it's very broad, but they provide co-working spaces and community of people who are working in this space to make better impact in the world. Climate Ventures is the project that we took on, and it's an initiative that's out of CSI. And it's really an incubator for entrepreneurs and leaders that are working on creating climate solutions and climate justice. And we did a brand as well as a website and some communication material pieces for them. It's called Climate Ventures. This logo that we created for them, we wanted to use a circle around the text and then kind of show energy to it and show transformation and change in a way that is exciting, creating movement. It's kind of a hub, and this is really what this initiative was all about, people coming together to create that change. So with this brand, we created a website, and you'll see kind of the circle, and it had 4 different states of transformation. It's kind of used throughout the website. We use green as related to the climate, which makes sense, as kind of our call to action that's spread out throughout the website. Great images of people doing work. They really focus on 3 main sections, so co-working space, community, and programs. And this is shown on their website as alongside talking about their vision and news and events and things that are happening. This is a site that we knew needed to be credible and give these people a really good space to go to show the work they're doing and to collaborate and get to know other people. And we knew that it would evolve, and that was kind of a tricky task to work around, but to provide them with other colors that they could use for different programs, flagship programs. This is an Earth Tech one that we could give the space to as the program got more funding to do this type of work. And a really important part of this was to showcase the people doing the work and give these great photos and the different work they're doing a place or a stage to show that. And this could be anything from fashion to transportation. These are all people that are really passionate about the climate and making it better. Another thing I should say is the website has a filtering option for the community that allows people to kind of sort who might align with the sustainable development goals or the type of work that they're doing or the type of people. So it had a lot of different filtering options. And we were able, this was actually a space that we used to work in. So we were able to go back to the space, which is a couple doors down from our current building, and look at the space and kind of add some of our graphics to the space to really uniform and unite the brand. So what this has really done is they've been able to attract members, funders, get media attention, and it really gave them a good platform for the awesome work they're doing. The members have raised $33 million just in the last 2 years. So we know that this isn't all attributed to the brand, but it is helpful to see how a brand and a story and the hard work that our clients are doing around such an important issue, climate change, can kind of all package into one.
Right on. So our next project is actually one of the members of Climate Ventures, Phytech Environmental Technologies. So this is a project we did with Phytech for clean energy. Now, Phytech works in biogas. Essentially what biogas is it means like taking organic waste and converting it into renewable energy. So imagine like that apple core or I mean, even like wastewater. Those are things that can be transformed into energy. So Phytech came to us about a year ago. They had been established as a company in Germany with a more German-sounding name, Finsterwalder Umwelttechnik, and they were preparing to open up a North American branch of the company called Phytech. Now, essentially, this is the biogas space is really dominated by a lot of like really engineering-oriented language and visuals, lots of blues and greens, and so we were looking for an opportunity with Phytech to stand out and set them apart. Thankfully, they have something that I can actually stand behind in terms of that, because Phytech has a really design-driven approach to the biogas plants that they build and the biogas products that they supply. They kind of see themselves as the Apple of biogas, even though they're much, much smaller. They're basically a startup, but we wanted to help them establish credibility and expand into the North American market. So in terms of visual identity, we looked to the original German logo and simplified it. We took some elements. There were some red arches based on the original logo. We pulled them out and made this this more simple, bold mark that they could really stand behind. Based on that, we developed this whole marketing toolkit. And part of it was like not just the look and feel, but also how do we tell this story about biogas in a way that doesn't just speak to the biogas geeks, but is also going to be of interest to government procurement people who are looking at municipal waste systems, or to other potential partners who maybe know a little bit about biogas but aren't experts. So we developed some language with them, like waste has never been this clean. We took those arches and we did a lot of original photography and video and integrated those arches as a graphic device through the system. So you'll see here through some of the samples of the website where we've, again, all original photography. We worked with, we went to 4 different sites across Canada, getting shots of their biogas plants in action, testimonials from their very happy clients, and then paired that with some engineering-oriented content, a bit more of like, okay, so not just what are you doing, but how does it work? Trying to explain some of these products. And we developed a typeface system that balances this like more marketing voice with this more technical specification engineering vibe, with these really strong navy blues and reds. And then again, here's some examples of how that works on the website. So we've currently been helping them to roll this out, roll out the branding across all their materials, everything from their trucks to their apparel. And addition to that, we made this like epic 2-minute brand anthem video to help tell their story. It's, you know, if you go to phytech.ca later, you'll get to see some of that. And so here's are some stills from that video. And one of the cool things about Phytech is recently, you know, we launched this website and they shared it with their German counterparts. And the German team said, "Oh my gosh, Phytech, you look like a very big and established company and you're actually only a couple of people." And we're like, yeah, exactly. That's kind of what we're going for. So this is an example where they're a really amazing company helping to drive forward biogas solutions, which is like a really important aspect of climate action. And we're helping them to reach new audiences and to expand their business by helping them to tell their story more clearly.
Great. So the next project we're going to talk about is with UNICEF for rights of women and girls. So this was actually one of the first projects that I worked on when I joined RallyRally. It was a very large project and a very important project. We worked with UNICEF to create a kit, a resource pack that would assist workers in dealing with gender-based violence in emergencies. So what that really means is in humanitarian emergencies such as refugee crises or camps, natural disasters and wars, where women and girls are very vulnerable, we wanted to make sure that people in the field helping were able to prevent and respond to these very important needs for children and women. So when we were tasked, or when we read the brief, we were kind of surprised at how robust and dense this document was. It was 2,600 pages of content that we needed to read through. Very important content that would be used by different audiences at different times. So we needed to think of a way to make all this technical information not only accessible to country officers, but to people in the field working with the women and children. And how are we going to do that? We didn't want to have an encyclopedia of content that someone wouldn't be able to bring into the field. So how could we break up the content into these different typologies to make it useful? These were some prototypes that we developed to kind of see, you know, what's the right format for this? Is it a box that you open that has a different booklets in it and different pieces that you can take out and bring with you as you need? Or is it a binder that has divisions in it and different page sizes so you can have easy access, but again, a series of binders? We kind of knew based on this amount of content that it was going to have to be a series of something. So the client, we worked with someone in New York that was from the UNICEF team, a project manager that was also based in New York, and we were working with a writer in Australia. So this was a very collaborative project, and we were doing it kind of in this similar way to COVID, where it is remote. But what we came up with was a series of kits that would be housed together, and we came up with 9. So from getting started to the assessment to responding to kind of evaluation. And something that I want to speak to is the design for this. So we were really inspired by the photography that we were working with, the places, the textures, the colors that we saw, and we wanted to create something that evoked kind of a feeling of hope and optimism and was positive. So there's a little glitch here, but I'll go to this page. And mixed with the idea of being able to showcase photography, we use color, icons, numbering to really sort out the content and make it easy to kind of navigate through. This is an example of what one kit would kind of contain: a card, a case study booklet, an assessment booklet, some tools, learning modules. There was kind of an overview story. And then this is what some of the spreads would look like. So, you know, still making it designed and like someone would want to read this and pick it up and go through the content and kind of guiding them through the process. So you can see the icons are used throughout the text to then get them to pick up the case study book. So this is a preview of what you would see the full case study in its own booklet. There was additional resources that people could draw their attention to. And this really was made for people that had extensive knowledge in gender-based violence. education, and then people that were just coming to it new and needed to be able to have those extended resources available to them. There was a series of worksheets where people could do the assessments in the field to see what is needed, what do we need to do immediately. And again, working with this kind of abstract visual and color coding to really make this resource kit optimistic and get people excited about doing this work when it is a very sensitive topic. This is for learning modules. So this is for people that would use this more in the country offices where they're educating people and running a class on what it is you're to do. And this is just a photograph of everything together. So this was a really fun project. It was a long project, but it definitely was a very important one. It's needed. And we were excited to be a part of it.
Thanks, Kaila. Coming back a little closer to home now, we want to show you a project in the city of Windsor, Ontario. This is a project with Transit Windsor for integrated mobility. So if you can picture Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario, one of the interesting places at the US-Canada border, where Canada is actually to the south. So this is just across the river from Detroit. We're in the city of Windsor. It's a mid-sized city, about 200,000 people. We were working with the public transit agency, Transit Windsor, as well as a transit consulting firm, Dillon Consulting, to basically come up with a new transit master plan. So let's go to the next slide. We have this city, their transit system is a bunch of buses. The transit system itself hasn't really been updated in about 40 years in terms of the route maps of like where the buses go and what the schedules are. But the city is like quickly changing and evolving. You have a rapidly diversifying population. You have a lot of low income and international students that rely on the bus, as well as newcomers. But it's still a really car oriented city. And so the transit agency was looking at how can we improve our system and rethink it in order to meet the challenges of the future, look to environmental sustainability, but also to social equity. And then how do we make sure that in that process, it's not just about a bunch of transit planners in a room looking at data, but also getting out there on the streets and on the buses and talking to people in the community about how transit could better serve their needs, whether they're current riders or whether they've never taken the bus and haven't thought about it. So we came up with this campaign called More Than Transit. And we had these, we put out these ads around the city, whether it was on bus shelters or social media, or with words like shape transit, shape our city. And if you kind of look at the visual DNA of this project, this is Transit Windsor's logo. We did not design this. This is several decades old. And they weren't at this point yet looking to like redesign their identity, but we're like, okay, what can we pull from that identity that can be a launch pad for our own design system for this campaign? So we pulled out let's go back a sec. We pulled out the arrow, the circle, the parallelogram, the blue, green, yellow. And they were like, okay, let's make some interesting shapes out of these, some interesting compositions. And we can actually talk about the idea of shaping transit, shaping our city, and then that being paired with language about this is more than transit. So riding the bus isn't just about getting from point A to point B. We're actually talking about like, how can transit better connect you to school, to work, to shopping, to the hospital, et cetera. And so this campaign really encouraged a lot of people to take part, whether it was in print, on the bus, or in social media. And it really made a big splash. Oops, it's fine, keep going. So we also have this animated video. You're not going to hear the sound here, but basically we looked at how do we take the elements of that poster and animate them. So we had a bit of an animated poster shared on social media. There's a really cool music track with this that you can't appreciate right now. But we have this like modular type that kind of like changes dynamically. This is another example of the ads on the bus. And ultimately it was driving people to take part in filling out a survey online or going onto a map and marking up their feedback or going to a public meeting. And let's go ahead. So the results of this, city council and the city staff said basically this was an unprecedented turnout in terms of online and in-person participation in Windsor. So we had over 2,000 responses, which is about more than 1% of the city population filling out the survey, 700 phone surveys, and then several other workshops with stakeholders and staff. And ultimately, the result of this was a new transit plan that kind of lays out the future decades of Transit Windsor's strategies and policies and action and investment in terms of they're actually redesigning where the buses go in the city. They're looking at different ways of connecting with technology and how to improve ridership, marketing and awareness and all of that. And we also kind of packaged it up with a bit of a brand strategy. We didn't rebrand them, but we said, here are the steps you need to take to make sure that your brand and marketing improve alongside your actual service experience.
So our next project is with the City of Toronto for housing affordability. So like many cities, it's becoming less and less affordable to live in the city and to buy housing. So what the City of Toronto wanted to do was create a campaign that would get community engagement, as well as educate people around one policy solution that can be used to create more affordable housing. We worked with a consulting agency that really ran the engagement process, but we were tasked with how do we, one, speak to people living in Toronto and connect to them, and how do we create something that's going to get their attention, as well get them involved to drafting this policy, and what does that really mean? So I'm going to play this little GIF if it works. So only 2% of housing built or approved in Toronto in the last 5 years has been affordable. So that's just a stat. And we knew this was a really important campaign to do and raise public awareness. Just to speak about kind of the design for this, we wanted to create a house, but more to represent a home. So, you know, it is the icon of a house, but it kind of transforms its height. So it could represent, you know, single home, a condo, a mid-rise building in the city, and it could feel relatable to many. And then the idea of a gradient of colors and this overlapping that happens is the solution, which is to create more mixed income housing, which is people, many people. We created messaging around, you know, who is everyone that we want to be able to afford housing in Toronto. It's all these people, from accountants, dog walkers, to flight attendants, to musicians, to zookeepers, etc. Everyone should be able to afford housing in Toronto. We created some materials for engagement process. And what this really means is it was about getting housing activists and developers to kind of get on the same page when it comes to a city and the importance of mixed income housing, where, you know, if someone were to develop a home, a condo building, a certain percentage of those units have to be affordable to people. So what does affordable mean? There's lots of things that are defined in this policy. And that's something that the city was looking to the community to help shape. And you can see there was workshops to get people thinking about this. So again, to really create a complicated subject matter, this was something that I had to learn more about, and making it accessible and that people could have this this conversation and make change in policy and help shape it. So we use these graphics and this color system to kind of play with infographics and create data for people. And really this policy is still being drafted. But as I mentioned before, it was seen as a way for a bit of a common ground between housing activists and developers in the city to see the importance of this and how we need to move in this direction. So that was a fun campaign that we got to do with the City of Toronto.
Okay, this is one more project to show you, and then we're going to wrap up. So this last one is with Artery for Equality and Civil Rights. So Artery is a startup with a large presence in Toronto and New York, as well as other cities, that believes every space is a stage. So basically, they connect creators and artists with people who have a space to offer. So for example, they have concerts in people's backyards. I've heard of operas in bathrooms where like 5 people buy a ticket and crowd into a bathroom and the singer's standing in the tub. You might have an art show in a barber shop or a laundromat. So they do these really interesting pairings of, and it's a community-based platform where you can offer your space, or if you're looking for a space to show your work, you can come together and make that happen. Now, back when the previous president was elected, and there were very quickly some harmful policies that were particularly xenophobic and racist put into place, the artery community wanted to come together and show a strong response to that. So they're asking, how can we support the cause for racial justice and inclusion in America, while also helping to build community and strengthen those ties within the artery community. So they came up with something called 14A. 14A is actually a short form for the 14th Amendment, which basically asserts each individual's rights to be treated equally under the law. And so we helped the artery team to build awareness of this campaign in a bit of a movement by creating a visual identity for this. So 14A, so we took the letter 14A, we put them on a stage, which is also a reference to the stripes of the American flag, which is also an equal sign. So really reinforcing that idea of equality. And that they're saying it was pop-up performances in support of civil liberties and human rights. Now, this is just a little like sketch of how it works. So you have that 14A equal sign, it opens up kind of like a stage, and it can become a place where you put in powerful statements and images. So this is an example of how it could work. So this system we carried through lots of different promotional materials to advertise, to help organizers advertise their own shows. Now, we heard from the artery community that not everyone wanted to lean into like a ultra patriotic blue and red palette. We actually created a palette that was a bit of like a teal blue and a bit of a coral red, kind of referencing the colors of the Women's March. But then we created an alternate palette, so if you weren't comfortable with those colors that didn't speak to you, you could choose from something else like green or black or violet. And then you could populate these poster templates or these social media templates with information about your own showcase to get the word out, but then also to report back and share highlights from like, you know, Instagram shot of what happened last night in my apartment. So this helped the community to get the word out and to like be very clear in asserting what they stand for. We even came up with this idea of like these cards that could be printed out and like put out on the table at the showcase, where you could fill in that blank space, fill in that stage yourself with a marker. Like, what does 14A mean to you? So there we go. Just on some closing thoughts as we bring it all together. Now that we've showed you actually 6 of our projects spanning many different communities and countries, everything from like branding to web design to these like physical kits that are out in humanitarian zones across the world. Ultimately, a point here is like good visual communication can cut through the noise and make complex topics approachable. So, you know, we really see design not just being about like prettying things up, but actually, okay, so the clients that we work with, they're doing really important work. We like to help them amplify their message, to bring more people into their movements, to help them raise funds, to build awareness. Ultimately, that is to reinforce what they're doing. So we're not the heroes. We just know that we have a role to play in humbly supporting and amplifying what they're doing, which is why we like to say, you know, we can rally together to go further and make a greater impact. When we bring their subject matter expertise and their passion with our design expertise and our passion, we're really proud of what we do. So going back to the original question that the naive Jay asked himself a decade ago back in design school, can design save the world? The answer we've arrived at is no, design won't save the world, but it can make a difference. And that's why RallyRally is here to stay. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
We're
you.
happy to go into Q&A for whatever time we have left here.
Guys, thank you so much. I want to be very, very cognizant of your time, but I definitely want to thank you for being here. To both you, Jay, and Kaila, and again to Jay, who has a newborn at home, for making this time to come and be in our little city and really show us the fantastic work that you guys have been doing. I liked the just the level of your work and how great it is. The quick distancing from the Transit Windsor logo, that was definitely not your logo, but you were still able to take bits and pieces of it and create something remarkable, and it was able to bring a bunch of support and questions and bringing the community together to build something that's better for the transit system, which every major city needs. Indy, you know, just saying. So I do want to be aware of your time. So I'm really just kind of going to ask one question and then a silly question. Is there like a balance that you've been finding keeping Rally alive? So like having a constant flow of projects and then choosing the projects that you want to that really kind of like keep your mission alive. Has there been like a difficulty even at first finding that balance?
Yeah. Thank you for your positive support and for the question. You know, thinking back to the early days, I think it was really a challenge to like find projects that could make it financially sustainable to run this kind of a business. You know, before we really had much like recognition or even much of a portfolio to stand behind us, it was like, that's why it was so much just like scrappy, like free work for activist organizations or activist groups that weren't even formal organizations. But over time, as we built that expertise, we were able to kind of attract larger and larger organizations like the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation or these municipal governments that we were talking about, or UNICEF. And I think in being so clear in like what we stand for and the kinds of work that we do, it actually makes our job easy that like pretty much everyone who reaches out to us has already self-selected and saying like, hey, are my values aligned with RallyRally? I'd want to work with RallyRally. And then we can just get more quickly to like, okay, like what is the project and is the budget and timeline a good fit for what we're going to do? The actual, like pretty much everyone who reaches out to us, we're super stoked about the types of things that they're doing in the world. And like, that's kind of energy that we want to be a part of. One other note related to that is, I think it's important, or it's useful as a studio like this to not just work with nonprofits. Certainly a nonprofit organization is one type of organization moving the needle forward on issues, but certainly, you know, governments and purpose-driven businesses. We talked about like Phytech, that biogas company, you know, who are basically still using a model of capitalism, but trying to use it for good. And we found actually having that diverse set of clients and partners has helped us to weather the storm of COVID. And so, you know, while some sectors are kind of being really affected, like we have some design colleagues in Toronto who did a lot of like work for restaurants and breweries, and like they had a period last year where they like everything fell out from under them. We never really had that because we were working with governments and those projects had kind of pivoted to respond to the needs of COVID, or we were working in like the clean tech sector, which is like booming despite all the other challenges. So that's where we're at.
Excellent. I know we only have a minute, and just real quick, do you want to start an arm of RallyRally here in Indy? Because that would be good.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry if I phrased the question in a way that made you feel like you had to say yes. I was kind of hoping for that.
No, I mean, we've actually been doing more and more work in the States. Like currently we have some just wrapping up a project in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County with their Parks and Rec department, as well as working in Maryland with the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission. And so looking for like more and more opportunities in the States. And I think with that comes, you know, we're also happy to be building more of these connections and friendships with our American pals to actually like work with us as well. And I know that another member of our team, Rodrigo Calderon, is actually watching in today too. And his kind of home base has been San Diego and has lots of connections. So I think Rodrigo is also keen to help us extend our arm into the States and get some high fives and build some things together. Kaila, before we wrap, can you just go to the last slide so everyone can see our contact info there? Thank you. So yeah, this is a place where you're welcome to reach out, RallyRally.design or at RallyRally4, that's FOR on all the social handles, or email me and we can be in touch. And if you have any final questions that have come through the chat, feel free to ask, and maybe Kaila can take a quick pass before we shut this down.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Dick, for doing that quick flip over there. As far as other final questions, I think I'm seeing a lot of bravos in the chat, and the other questions I think were about finding work. It seems like you've hit a stride at a point where the work is finding you, which is like the idea of self-sustaining, right? And that's like a design agency's dream.
Mhm.
We'll be able to put your contact info into the chat box. We had it up for a little while on screen, and then we came back over here. I'm watching both. There's like a little bit of a delay that I'm having to bump right through. So yeah, I think we're all good here. And sorry, that was
Woo! Yeah, thank you
but
so
dude, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having us.
You're welcome and thank you. We're sending all our love from Toronto.